I feel like I should gallop out and rear on my horse. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm here. I made it this far. Come on in. You're just on time. Thank you. Thank you. A beautiful city. It's just beautiful here, yeah. And when I rode through Michigan in 2014 and 15 on the 8,000-mile ride, it really was one of my favorite stops, except for, of course, the bugs. That was pretty nasty. That was pretty nasty. I had to really dig in and find some alternative methods of bug protection. So I'm on this book tour now. I know I'm almost at the end of it though. I left in September of last year, and I've gone now all through the West Coast, and I did Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico. I skipped Texas. That'll come out. I'll do that after. There's a documentary coming out at the end of this year, so I'll do that later. And then I came up through Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, the UP, Wisconsin, the UP, and now I'm here. And I've just still got New York. I did LaPorte and Swanton in Indiana. So I'm a bit. Riding a horse is a lot easier than this, I'll tell you. But the three questions most often asked are, how old am I? Aren't you afraid? And do you carry a gun? Those are the ones that I'm asked again and again and again. And at first I used to lie about my age. I looked quite a bit younger than I do today. I was 50 when I started, but I would say, oh, I'm old enough that I don't have to tell. And then sometimes I say, well, how old do you think I am? And they'd say, oh, you look like maybe you're 60. And I go, 60? And I thought, oh, I'm older than that. And I'd make up something like that. And today, now, 15 years later, that's it. This is what I'm doing. So, and aren't I afraid? And the answer is no, I'm not afraid. I wouldn't be doing this if I were afraid. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And do I carry a gun? And yes, I do carry a gun. And I think it would be irresponsible of me not to have a gun. If those horses were hurt and had to be put down, I should be capable of doing such a thing. So, and protection. I mean, I'm riding some pretty nasty places, and I'm alone an awful lot. A lot of times I'm riding in country that's got guns and alcohol, and it's not always a good combination. So, but a little background. I am from a Minnesota dairy farm, and my father could barely read or write, but he gave me can-do-ness. And I call it can-do-ness because I saw that man do things that, you just, how are you going to do this? You don't have a pot to piss in, but I'll tell you, he could make it work, whatever. He was not a kind, loving man. He was by far nothing like that. There was never any hugs or I love you. But what he did not do is he did not chase me away. He did not say, get out of here. So if he needed a wrench, I'll get that wrench for you. Dad, if you need the gate open, I'll get it for you, Dad. And I shadowed that man. I shadowed him when I was young, and if I wasn't shadowing him, I was on the back of a horse. I rode in my mother's belly. I came out riding. We had horses on the farm, and this was out west of Minneapolis. And then of course at that time, we were pretty poor dirt farmers. But my mother came from a fairly well-to-do situation. She had a university degree from the University of Minnesota and had been raised by a group of 5 of these aunts. And one of them was Aunt Linda, whom I knew quite well until I was 24, and she graduated from Harvard. She was the first woman to graduate from Harvard with a degree equal to a man. And I spoke at Harvard a few years ago on her behalf. They did a commemorative on her. But all of these women brought culture into our poor dirt farm. They brought music and dance and art, and we had things in the house that I did not see at our neighbors. That we had these Oriental rugs. Of course, they were all worn, by the time I was there, but still we had Orient rugs, and we had paintings that the aunts had done. One aunt was a co-founder of the Minneapolis Institute of Art. We were taken to the Guthrie for a theater, and we were taken on a boat ride and a train ride. And my mother gave me the love of the horizon. She broadened my world that I cannot even imagine what my life would have been like had I not had her in my life. So I dedicate my rides to my mother. So I only mention that the farm is because it's probably one of the most instrumental elements in my being able to do what I've been doing. The other thing is I taught classical ballet for 30 years. I still teach. And I learned the RAD method. The RAD is the Royal Academy of Dance, the British method. And I've taught that, studied that very seriously, not as a dancer, but as a teacher. And the last few years were spent up in Montana. And I still have a small log cabin up there, up in the northwest corner of Montana. And I've been up there, I've had that for 30 years. But these children came from dirt floors. This was like a little mini Appalachia. It's not like that now, but at that time it was. These children came from the very poorest of poor. And I gave them ballet classes through the winter, and during the summer I gave them the dressage classes. You know, I mean, I know. It was a very important part of my life, that time. I do not have children. I was married for a short time, but never remarried, and devoted my time and my life to teaching. Then came 2003, 4, 5, and it was like, you know, it was just time to change. There was just something going on, and I just had to do something. I know it's kind of hard to explain. I don't know. I'm sure everyone's gone through it, but I saw it as a window of opportunity. No children, no parents had passed away, nobody needed me, no bills. Everything was paid for. I really had no reason to not stay. There was a relationship that was not going to go anywhere, and I said, I'm going to ride till I forget about him. And I did. And I did. And I'm so grateful that I know I did, that I didn't go that path, although it's been a trade-off. Believe me, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, that it has been a trade-off. I gave up an awful lot to do what I'm doing. So when I put this book tour together, I wanted to share with you something besides what I eat, where I go to the bathroom, and my routes look like, because that's a lot of times what I'm talking about. I've been doing these talks for a long time, and they got started because after the first ride, I had no more money. I had no more money. I didn't have anything that wasn't going to stop me. So I started going in, and I'd ride into town at noon, and I'd ride into town, and I'd go, and I could smell it, because I was usually very hungry, and I'd ride to the senior center, and they were having lunch. And I'd ride in, and I'd say, I can play piano, and I can give you a talk while they're eating. For a meal? Could I trade you for a meal? And that's how it got started. And then somebody gave me $5. And then maybe somebody gave me another $5, and then sponsors came along, and then you know, the rest is now I'm here. Right, kept me going. Anyways, kept me going. But I was living for the most part on $3 a day. I lived on cheapest tuna fish, cream cheese, tortillas, and a cucumber. $3 I could go in and buy. I was living on $100 a month if I could do that. Yeah, I know. Okay, but what I wanted to share with you on this talk, on these book tour talks, was what I learned. After 30,000 miles and 14 years of long riding, I wanted to share what I've learned. So I'm going to give you a brief history of what I look like as I progress through my rides, and then I'm going to share what I learned. So here I got started. Here I go. This is my mother, Cornelia Hoy, at 34, bringing in milk. My beloved mother. She brought such joy to our farm. You know, she did. She loved her children. And I often wonder, though, if it was enough for her, because she loved to read and she loved to travel. And she really didn't get much of that after she had 6 kids and a poor dirt farm to take care of. This is what I look like today. Now, this is last year. I'm coming up I rode the Mexico border last year. I did 4 short rides last year. I did the Mexico border, 400 miles, came up to Albuquerque, hauled up to Nebraska, left the horses there, went over to France, did a 300-mile ride in France, came back, then rode from Nebraska to Laramie, Wyoming, 250 miles, hopped over the mountains because there was still snow, and then rode from Craig, Colorado, up to Rock Springs, Wyoming. So those were the 3 rides that I did last year. And I put that up there because I wanted to show you, if I saw that rider coming down the road, I'd say, yeah, that looks pretty decent. You know, I've got packs are even, smooth lines, pads are even and stretched out. I'm in heavy traffic, the heads are down, we're moving along just nice and easy. Everything's padded, everything that touches the horses is padded now. I'm riding fjords. That's the only thing I will ride today. This is Montana Spirit and Little Liska Pearl. Montana's been out with me about 14,000 miles. She's done an 8,000-mile ride with me, a 2,000-mile ride, a 1,600-mile ride, and then these rides last year with me. And then Little Liska Pearl, she has only been out with me about 14, 15, maybe almost 2,000 miles now. But she's just getting started. She's a little sport model fjord. This is again coming up the Animas Valley. It was very interesting riding the Mexico border. This was last year though. A lot has happened since last year, but it was still very interesting, and I won't talk about it today, there's just too much. But this is you think there's nothing out there, but there's grass out there. All that brown stuff is stuff for them, and this is another reason why I ride fjords. I'm just packed up and ready to go. Took a picture of myself. So here's the book tour that I'm currently on, and you see where I've left, and like I said, I skipped this. I skipped that. I'll do that later, and you can see where I'm at. And all I have is New York left. That's all I have is New York left. So when I was putting this book tour together, I've never traveled with a truck or trailer. I've never owned a truck or trailer. I didn't travel with a cell phone, GPS, anything. I had none of those things. But I have a cell phone, a flip phone, because the publisher said I had to have a phone. But I was trying to, what am I going to do? What am I going to take? I knew, you know, like I needed a truck and a trailer. And so I have this truck at home, sitting there for a long time, but I tried to get my sponsors to give me a truck, you know, Tucker Saddle, Cashel, Outfitter Supply. They got trucks, they got a trailer. I know they did. No. They're really good to me, but no, they're not gonna give me a truck or a trailer to use. So this is the Lady Long Rider book tour mobile. I know. Think of how far I have come. Look at that. So this is a 1969 Ford, and it was given to me by the man who bought it new, Old Bill Griffin, and its name is Old Bill's Blue Truck. And I have had no problems, not one. You're in Ford country. I'm just posting this on the website. It's like everybody's looking at this truck. I mean, it's not. You don't have trucks like this anymore out here because they're all rusted, right? But so I went through it, rebuilt engine, front end, front brakes, everything's done on it, and every day I touch it. You're a champion. You're a champion. And people go, oh, you're going to jinx it. No, you're a champion. So then the trailer was sitting in the neighbor's yard and buried in the dirt. The axle, everything had been sitting there for 25 years. Brand new, never been used. I took that, put new floor in, wheels, bearings, and away we went. So then I'm thinking, so there's my setup. I've got my kitchen in the back, or sometimes I'll put the kitchen in the trailer. I keep the trailer really clean, but where am I going to sleep? Well, I have my trailer, my tent. I could put the tent up in the back of the trailer. Some of you have done that. I'm sure some of you have done that. Or maybe in the back of my truck. But I know how dirty it is. I know how windy it is. I know what it's rainy like that. I know what this is all like. I knew I was going to be tired. And I'm cleaning this trailer up, and I'm looking around, and I crawl inside, and I get in there, and I go, oh my gosh, that's where I sleep. So I made that into my living quarters. And my living quarters, you got to remember, I lived in a tent for 13 years, literally lived in a tent with my horses for 13 years. So I crawl in there, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is it. So I sealed it all up, and I carpeted it, patted it, and I insulated it, I wallpapered it, I put photos all up of all the horses and dogs the dog that have traveled with me. I put all that in there, and it's working. I've got a light and a heater in there because I'm staying at fairgrounds, rodeo grounds, or backyards or wherever, and it's just working out beautifully. I couldn't be happier with it. Of course I run. I have to ride with her. That's Montana Spirit. She's in the book. So she's just very interested in all of this, and she just can't hardly believe that she's in that book. I know it. She is my girl. All right, so here's my first ride. So I started out, I was 50 years old, and I left the northwest corner of Montana, and I rode down to Albuquerque to see my sister, who was adamantly opposed to my coming. She was really not happy about my doing this. And, in the book, I realized that, I really didn't think about them my sisters, how worried they'd be. I thought they'd be so excited for me. I thought they'd be riding with me and enthusiastic and happy, but they weren't. And this was a ranch, not the man, this was a ranch that I trained horses on. I also, besides giving riding lessons to these children, I also trained horses in the summertime. And I usually had 5 or 6 horses from this Tennessee Walking Horse Ranch in Trigo. These are just pleasure horses. They were nothing for show, but I trained them. And this was a big Tennessee walking horse that I had trained and worked with 2 years. And I rode into a nightmare. The first year it was an absolute nightmare. Now you've got to remember that I never in my life said, I want to go on a long ride. I never thought this. I never even knew what a long ride was. I thought I was the first person to ever do a long ride. I thought that, I'd be doing something really unique. Well, I'm not. There's many long riders. There's been many in history, and many there's currently rides out there. But when I got started, I cried. I cried the day I left. I cried for weeks. This was an absolute nightmare. I thought I was so prepared. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I had everything down. I'd rehearsed everything in my mind. I'd covered all of my training, ropes and bridges and railroad tracks, everything I possibly could. And I rode out into a nightmare. I'm not going to talk about that because you can read about that nightmare. I finished that ride. It took about 5 months to finish that ride, and I got back. The owner, Mr. McCurry, wanted that horse back, so I gave that horse back, broke my heart. And then I went out. I didn't have any money now, and my sister helped me buy this gray thoroughbred. She was going for dog food. She was a horse trader, had her. If I had a big stick, I would have hit that guy in the head and taken all of his horses. This was just one of those pathetic situations. She was standing knee deep in mud. She had rain rot. She was, how they're all curled up and she's shaken. And I don't ride her, nothing. I say, I'll take her. I take her home. I'm working with her. She wants nothing to do with me. She's 12 years old. She's absolutely out of her mind. She's out of her mind. She's in the stall rocking back and forth, doing spins, rocking back and forth, doing spins. I had a little pony for her for companionship, but she was out of her mind. She didn't want me to touch her. She didn't want anything to do with me. I changed her diet, started her, exercising. I was leading her off this pony. I was riding the pony and leading her. And she got better, and she got better, and she got better. And then I think, okay, now I'm going to lay across her back. I realized this horse probably hasn't had any weight on her for a long time, so I'm going to do this very careful and very slowly. And I'm in the barn, in the alleyway, and she's tied up on one side, and I have a little stool, and I climb up there, and I slowly lean my weight onto her, and she fell to the ground. I know. And I dropped back off, and I went reeling back on the other side of the wall, dropped down onto my heels, and I sobbed because I realized I just bought a horse that was probably, what? Who knows? I mean, what would you think? You would have called in all of I had no money. There was no money to do anything like that. So I set to work on her. I started doing massages. I did all these stretches. I knew these things, so I started working on her. I started making her climb mountains, and I had her not with me on her, leading her, and still, just doing as much as I possibly can. I started doing ground dressage work and letting her run, and be wild, and she'd throw up her head and whinny, and she was really coming around, but she kept falling to the ground. She kept falling to the ground every time I'd lay across her. I don't know. I don't know what ever kept me going. Finally, I lay across her back. She's on the ground, and I have my arms across her, and I'm slapping her on the belly, and I'm crying, and I'm going, come on, if you don't get up, you're gonna go for dog food. And she got up. And she rode with me 11,000 miles. I know it. That is what I looked like on my second ride. Now, obviously you can see these are single horse rides. I have no tent. I'm sleeping on the ground, just a tarp, my 2 saddle pads, that's all I was using back then. I didn't know much. 2 saddle pads, saddle at my head, packs on my side. I laid on my side, my dog in here like this. It's the only reason I stayed alive out there is because of that dog who helped keep me warm. I put my water bottles in my sleeping bag to keep it from freezing. I'm riding now on a 5,000-mile ride. I've left Montana. I've ridden to Minneapolis, dropped down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, across Death Valley, up the Sierra Nevadas, across Mount St. Helens and home, a 22-month ride, the hardest ride I ever did. And here I am. I'm standing here in tennis shoes because about a month earlier, I'm coming through Iowa, maybe not that, maybe 3 weeks. I'm coming through Iowa, and Claire Dog, my beloved Claire Dog, she had a habit of taking my gloves, my underwear, and my boots, taking them away. And I knew better than to leave them laying around. I knew this. She'd done this to me so many times. I woke up in the morning, my boots are gone. I cannot find them. I'm in deep grass. I cannot find them. Hours later, I say, forget it, I'm riding. I got on stock and footed. I rode to a house. I had to step down off my high horse and ask for a pair of shoes. And they gave me a big pair of tennis shoes, put extra socks and plastic bags in, and I rode with that for months till I finally, some secondhand store, I got a pair. Anyways, I look at that and I think, oh my gosh, if I saw this rider coming down the road, I'd say, she doesn't know what the heck she's doing. You know, like, what's she got that rope on there for? Why has she got this neck strap on? What's this? Why isn't that padded? Why is that on there? Why isn't there padding underneath there? That's no good. That's no good. But now I've got Tucker saddle and I've got Outfitter supply packs. Those first year, I had a 45-pound Simcoe roping saddle. That was just not good. But I'm a little better. I'm a little bit better here, not much. Just keep this in mind, this big pink gelding named Hart. Just keep that in mind. So then I finish that 5,000-mile ride. I get back home, and I'm going to set out on a 3,000-mile ride. But I realize that my dog must have a horse to ride now. So I go out, and I find Essie Pearl. This is my first fjord that I have ever had and knew anything about. And she was diagnosed lame. Well, I'll take her, of course. I'm only going to ride 26,000 miles with her, you know. Okay, so I'm looking at her, you know, and it's another one of these kind of situations where you see this horse and it's like, you cannot walk away from it. I just couldn't walk away from her. I don't know. I don't know what in the world I thought I was doing. She had splits down the front of her feet. She had been standing in a barn in manure and straw. Her feet had splayed and just were disintegrating. She had been diagnosed lame by a farrier and a vet. They said, no, she's lame. Okay, so after I decide I'm going to take her, I pay $1,000 for this horse. They wouldn't come down in the price. They were going to sell her as a brood mare. I knew what was in store for this mare. I was just like, okay, I'll take her. I take her. I had snow. I had that working for me because she was okay out in soft snow. Any kind of hard pressure, though, she couldn't stand it. So I'm working with her. Sure enough, she comes up lame. And her feet, and I'm working with these feet, and I go, what is it? What is it? I've changed her diet. I'm doing exercises and all these kind of things with her that I do, you know, coming up with that I can think of. And I'm digging in her feet every day, 2, 3, 4 times a day. I'm digging in these feet, and finally I find it. On both outer rims of the front foot, besides that split in the middle, there were holes, abscessed holes between the quick and the wall that had hard packed so hard you would have thought it was her hoof. And it took a long time for me to discover, and they were both about the size of my big thumb. And I packed those in oil with wool and oil and put easy boots on her. And I knew what she needed was dry land and to walk slowly all day long. Not just a little bit of walking, but just to walk slowly all day long till those feet would seize up. I hauled down to Needles, California. And by the time I got to Nicodemus, Kansas, about 2,000 miles later, I had feet and shoes on her, horseshoes on her, and it worked. And she rode with me, like I said, 26,000 miles. She's the finest I'll ever have. I'll never have a horse like her again. I lost her to EPM at the end of the 8,000-mile ride. When I got back, she had EPM, and it's a parasite that affects the nervous system, eats the brain. By the time I got back, it was too late. I put her down. I chose to put her down rather than to try and rehabilitate her. It was a hard choice, and I did, and that just about stopped me. But then somebody gave me Little Liska Pearl. And then there's Montana Spirit, whom I'm riding today. And again, she may be one of as far as disposition and build. She is a quarter Percheron and Fjord, and I'm riding her today. So I'm out. Okay, wait a minute, I gotta go back. All right, so I gotta go back to this one. So I set out on the 3,000-mile ride. I do a 3,000-mile ride with Essie Pearl and Honor, and then I get back and I do a 6,000-mile ride. I set out on a 6,000-mile ride with Honor and Essie Pearl, and I ride from the northwest corner of Montana to Portland, Oregon, down to Wimberley, Texas. That took me about 8-9 months to get down there. I'm down in Texas, and I went in to give a talk for a senior center or something, and Essie Pearl kicked Honor and shattered her femur bone. And I had to have her put down. There was no choice there. It was simply, it was done. And I had broken a golden rule. I knew those mares, they were, Essie Pearl never liked Honor. Honor was always in heat, and it drove Essie nuts. She hated that. And they kicked. And I have horseshoes on. You can see a pair back there. These are special horseshoes, and they're deadly. And I did not put those horses in separate pens, and that was a golden rule. You don't leave your horses in like that. And there was a big arena, this sunny day. I thought, oh, I'm doing them a favor. All the success is mine, but all of the mistakes are also mine. And I nearly disintegrated into a pool of sorrow, losing her, because of what happened. But then the Texans came along and they gave me Hart, the big pink gelding, him. And I got on Essie Pearl and I rode about 250 miles to look at other horses, and I settled on him. And he was, again, the most unsuited horse for long riding there ever could have possibly been. He was so clumsy. And he was clumsy because he had been injured. At least this is in my mind. That horse had been injured somewhere along the line. He was used for roping, and he was not built for roping. Dressage, yes. Roping, no. And but I'm walking, okay? So then I take these two, Essie Pearl and Hart, and I head north up to Minnesota from Texas, and I'm riding up through the panhandle of Texas in Tornado Alley in the spring, and I'm riding through tornadoes. And I get up there, and he soars up just behind my saddle pad. He soars up there, not the saddle, just behind the saddle pad. I could not get that saddle pad right. I could not keep the saddle in place. I could not get it done right. It usually takes me a while to figure this out. Now I have it down. Now I know what I'm doing, but at this time I didn't. So he soars up back here, he rubbed him, and he's sunburned. I couldn't put a saddle on him. So I shipped the saddle up to Minnesota, and I rode bareback for 300 miles because I had to keep moving. I would have had a horse soft as butter if I'd stopped for 2 weeks. He had a lot to learn yet. He had to know his ropes and his road and skills, all these things he had to learn. And he never would have got there if I sat there with him. So by the time I got to Minneapolis, I had a horse that was ready to go. And I put the saddle back on and I headed for Montana. So that was the 6,000-mile ride. Then I got back after that, and I rode back across the mountains. I've rode across the Rocky Mountains now 12 times, and I rode back across the mountains, back over to eastern Montana. I'd crossed over, and I was up in the northwest corner of Montana, and it was still early spring. I still had summer, and I rode back, and I was given Montana Spirit, and she's just a young 3-year-old here. And I did a 3-horse 2,000-mile ride up through Canada. I started this out with a young girl. Her name was Emily McKee, and she lasted a couple hundred miles. And there I am up in my first international ride with 3 horses. By this time now, I'm doing my own shoeing. I make my own clothes. I'm pretty much, everything is much different. You see the doggy box now is really come into. She's got 4 corners like that, and she's a roll bar, and she's looking good. She's the star of the show. Nobody's interested in me. I have a dog and pony act now that I'm traveling around with. I'm causing accidents. I'm going and I'm a whole different show. I have food now, I have a tent now. It's a much different ride. But this was my first 3-horse, and I did a 3-horse, a 2,000-mile 3-horse, a 1,600-mile 3-horse, and a 600-mile 3-horse ride. And then Hart stayed home when I left on the 8,000-mile ride, and Claire stayed home on the 8,000-mile ride. And those are the rides thus far, except for last year. Here's Claire Dog shots. Claire Dog came to me. She was up at about 2003, I think it was. I was out riding an old mare that I had. I'm still teaching, and there were 2 puppies that had been thrown off in the ditch. There's snow. There was a lot of snow yet, so it was like a telephone box or something like that, and they were laying next to them. One was dead already. The other one was Claire, and she was growling at me. And I'm going, it's like you think, oh no, I had 2 dogs, it's like, oh, do I need another dog? No, but I get off my mare, I slide off, and I crawl over the berm. I had heavy gloves on. I grab her, and I left the other one there, grabbed her and took her and crawled back up on my horse, and she's laying there in my crotch on the warm horse, and she's looking up at me, and her tail's just going, da, 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 da. Just looking up, and I'm looking down at her, and it's like, oh my gosh, she's got one eye blue, one's half brown, half blue. Both ears were up though, and she's calico cat, mask, and she's just like, oh my gosh. I'm going, you're not staying with me. I've got 2 dogs. We're going to find a home for you. We're taking you to the dog pound. I'm running all these things through my head. Oh, she's not going to stay. I get home, I'm in the house 2 hours. My old dog grabs that ear, and down it went forever. So add that to the mismatched look of a rare breed of unknown origin. That is what I called her. She was, those of you who have dogs, there's one dog that will remain above the others, and this was Claire. I know, I miss her. I will not replace her. I will not ride with another dog. This is the first time I've been without a dog my entire life. But it also has presented to me a scenario that I never would have expected, because before it was me and the dog and the horses, and Claire would never let them come by the tent. She would never and now the horses lie down right next to me, and there's a threesome that I never would have known had I not lost her, or had not gotten another dog. It's really a very unique relationship that I have with the horses now. It's much more intimate than I had. It was a clear defining line when I had Claire with me. Teaching her how to ride. She knew how to ride. I had taught her how to ride in a wheelbarrow and in a bicycle basket is for motion. And then, and I had taught her how to ride on a little pony, and I had a draft mare earlier on, years before, while I was teaching, those years teaching. So she knew how to ride, but to get a horse that was going to let her jump on the back of her, bare back, that was an issue. And the fjords have a thick skin and a very coarse hair, and those are 2 reasons why they're so suited for long riding. But a mind like this, it's like, okay, there's a dog on my back, let's go. And it was so easy to train her. Once this happened, I was like sold. Fjords, yeah, that's what I want. I want this in my life. Much simpler. I started making doggy booties. The first year out with her, I did not think of what would happen to my dog's feet. And of course, right. So I would rub them down with bag balm at night, and then I wrapped them in flannel sheets, because I had a flannel sheet with me, and I put strips, and then I wrapped them in duct tape. It was awful. And then I bought all these doggy booties. I had no money. That were awful too. Then I started making these little doggy booties out of deer hide, because I was making my own pants, and these were parts that came off of the deer hide. And but they're shaped like moccasins. They actually are shaped with a tongue, and they laced up, slit down the back, go around the dew paw, and then they have baby socks inside to keep the sand out. And that worked so well, and she would just wait. She'd hold herself up, dance around, and away she went. She loved them. She just loved them. It was a great success, her trying to get on. And I put her up, and then I'd just pop her up like that, and I always helped her down. She was ruining her shoulders from jumping down. So, all right, here we go. What I've learned. The only thing worse than being blind is to see without vision. When I read this, that Helen Keller had written that, I thought, That is so true. Because I realized early on, after having so many people stand at my side, and I've heard it tonight already, I've always wanted to do that. I wish I could do a long ride. I've always dreamt of doing a long ride. I wish I could do that. But I realized early on that it was going to take a whole lot more than hopes and dreams and wishes to make these rides happen. That hopes and dreams and wishes are like clouds and wind and rainbows. They disintegrate. They are not something clearly defined and attached to me. So I remember even by the first time out, the first ride out, I remember after I'd gone halfway through my first ride, it was apparent that I had been profoundly changed by this, that there was no going back. And I was casting out, and I felt like it was like that, like I was casting out like a fishing rod, and I cast it and I go, I'm gonna ride over there. And then it would sink and it would fall away. And then I go, I'm gonna ride over there. And then it would sink, and then it would fall away. And then I'd cast over, and bam, it sunk, and it hit. And it was something that I had fallen in love with. I just fell in love with that idea. And it was a vision. It was a clear-cut vision. And I didn't have to fight to get there. It pulled me. All I had to do was keep my head clear of all the debris, all the what-ifs and the maybes, and oh no, and I don't know, maybe, I don't know, no, yeah. All these things that we fill our heads with. If I could keep that clear, I was attached to that vision. And that was such an important lesson. Daily, constantly bringing myself back. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Bring myself back. Remember where you're going, how best to get there. Remember where you're going, how best to get there. Having a vision is a whole lot different than hopes and dreams. 4 feet on the ground. Those of you who ride, you all know what it's like. You're 12 feet off the ground. You've got a 360-degree view. You're up. You've got this movement underneath you. You've got this gentle kind of rocking chair, this sound of clickety-clackety, clickety-clackety. You've got an animal that can think. I don't have to make it steer. All I have to do is think. And it goes down through my body and into this animal. I've got 4 feet on the ground. You know that saying, oh, they got 2 feet on the ground. Sturdy person, 2 feet on the ground. I've got 4 feet on the ground. I got 4 ears, 4 eyes. Flick of the ear, there's a moose. Flick of the ear, there's a bear. Flick of the ear, there's a rattlesnake. So the life is just like, it's just raging at you. It's just coming at you all the time. But the most profound thing about equestrian travel is this image that you present to the world. This iconic, legendary image that you present to the world. You ride into town looking like that, and you are just bombarded with, you what? You came from where? You're riding across the country? It's something that opens people's hearts up. It engages people. They want to talk. They invite you in. They want to be part of it. They ride vicariously with me. Thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people ride vicariously with me. That is the difference in equestrian travel than any other kind of travel. It's that image that I'm presenting to the world. And I realized that it was something I needed to take seriously. This was not something I was just like, I'm out on some la-di-da adventure. This was something I took very seriously from the very beginning. I knew what was happening to me. I knew how people were being affected by my long rides. Unity was another thing that, you'd think this would be something that I would have thought of before this, but I didn't. I really didn't think of this. And not just unity and how these animals had to operate together. They have to ride tandem both sides. Both horses have to ride and pack, but they also need to know both sides, at my leg, both sides, and at the tail. They both have to know how to do this together, back together, drop into the ditch. They have to know how to gallop across a bridge or gallop across the road at a moment's notice. Let's go! And run. Let's go. Pick up and go. No dragging a horse. They're up there. There's loose reins. We're riding in unity. We have to ride in unity. But the part that I didn't know about was how connected I am to everybody, even though I'm out there by myself. How much I needed people, how much I needed you. I have been on the edge of a town so many nights, waiting to go into town in the morning, because you don't ride into town at night, you ride in the morning. You eat all the food you've got left, whatever is left, you eat everything up, you kind of clean yourself up, roll your sleeves up, wipe your face off, and in the morning you're going to ride in and you're going to meet this community. You're going to unite with this community, and they're going to unite with me, and we're going to exchange stories. And I realized this river of humanity and how it existed and how much I needed it and how much we need one another and how important it is. This was a big discovery for me. I know, it just seems so simple, but I didn't think about it. You know, we don't think about it when we have all these things around us. But when you take everything, when you take the plate off the table and you take the table off the kitchen and you take the kitchen out and you take the house out and they're standing there naked, you realize how much you need each other. It was another very profound experience learning that. The curious and the interested. On a given day, I will have thousands of people pass me. I'm riding roads for the most part. I'm riding four-wheeler roads, power line roads, ditch roads, Forest Service roads, county roads, state roads. I even ride some freeways. Some states will let me ride a freeway. If I can't get through any other way, I'm on a freeway. But there's only a handful that'll stop. And to them, I call them the curious and the interested. I used to pray they would stop. I prayed that they would stop because I hoped they had food in their car. I was hungry all the time. And they'd stop. Somebody would go by and they'd turn around and they'd come back and they'd roll their windows down. And my horses' heads went in immediately. And they'd jump back and they'd go, what did they want? And I'd go, oh, food. And I'm sitting on my horse, oh, food, you know, looking down. And so there out comes the potato chips and the candy and the cookies that people have in their cars. Back then I ate it all. Now I don't eat any of that stuff, but that I did. And then they're going to start to give potato chips to my horses because my horses ate all that stuff. And I'm going, oh, no. We'll wait. I'll save it to them for tonight when we get back. And I took that all. I put it in my packs. And as soon as they're gone, I'm eating everything. Those horses never got that stuff. No way, no way away. But they were the curious and interested. And most of those people have children in their cars. And I'd say to them, the most important lesson you have just given your child is to stop. If you're interested, stop. Find out what it is. Be curious enough and interested enough to stop. And I find that at my age, at 65, that I find this in other people at my age, and that it's just sort of like they're losing it, the curiosity and the interest. It's like, oh, those young people, they just don't know how to work anymore. Everybody's out to get you. Oh, you know, it's just this kind of negativity stuff. It's like, you know, they're losing it. And I want everyone just like to, I feel so many times out there, so many times I'm going, I can't believe I get to do this. I just hope that for you. I hope that you have moments of that. Like you can just stop and say, I can't believe I get to be a mother. I can't believe I get to live with this person. I can't believe I get to be a grandfather. You know, just moments like that you just can't believe you get to do what you're doing, that you don't lose that. It's such a vital spark to being alive, being curious and interested. That's what I did. That's basically what I did for 13 years. I would ride into town, I would circle the nursing home, I would circle the hospital. These are little tiny towns across America, and out they came. And this was really important to me because I was having a really hard time justifying what I was doing. People would say, why do you do this? You know, why would you want to do this? You know, by this time I'd ridden a fair amount of miles. And why are you still doing it? And it was like, I didn't have an answer for them. I loved it. I love long riding. In my tents, I love my life as a lady long rider. All my tents have that. My trailer, I love my life as a lady long rider. I love riding cross country on horseback. I love it. But I didn't have a real, you know, like, oh, because I can. You know, because most of them, you know, most long riders are out on a cause. There's a lot of long riders that are out on a cause, or they're doing one ride. That's it. It's one ride. And I'd been out there for years now. And so then I was able to say, I'm riding cross country, putting smiles on people's faces. And it gave me some validation. I really took that as like, yeah, okay, that's what I'm doing, all right? But that's it. It happened all the time. Here, you gotta remember, I had no cell phone, no GPS, none of that stuff. I ride into town, I'm gonna buy supplies at the store. The store's been closed for years. I ride to the post office, this happened so many times. I ride to the post office, the postmistress is on the phone because usually there's women. There's a woman here. She just rode from Montana. I don't know. She needs some food. What am I going to do? Okay, I'll send her over. And so I go over to her friend's house. I tie the horses up front. Here she is standing at the door. I walk up. I go into her kitchen. She's opening the cupboards. She opens the refrigerator. She says, "What do you need?" And if I could pass on any message, it's this: the goodness in our country that still exists. Please, it is everywhere. Everywhere I've gone, I find goodness. I really and truly do. I know I'm not riding around in some bubble. I'm not, believe me. I know that it's not all good, and I'm ride with care, caution, skill, and attentiveness. But there's such goodness in our country. And please, I know our country is so divided right now. It breaks my heart to see such division when I see such goodness everywhere I go. And people, even though I don't follow their beliefs or their political views, I still find goodness. This is another reason why I think fjords are best suited for this. I'm at schools an awful lot. I'm over in New York doing a talk. This is on the ride when I came through here. But the fjords love people. They love people. They don't mind being touched, and I do a lot of talks, and I think being a single woman out there is an advantage. I do get invited in. I do get asked to stop. I am invited into places that most men long riders would never be invited into. A lot of times they have a gun on their hip outside and they're pretty rough looking, and who's going to ask them in? I wouldn't ask them in. Here I am. I'm crossing Montana. I'm crossing North Dakota, and I'm finishing up the 6,000-mile ride, and they've invited me into the school. This is just very spontaneous. This happens often, and they brought these poor kids out in the rain, and I'm giving them a talk. And what am I talking to them about? About their long ride of school. We're all on long rides. I happen to be an equestrian long ride, but we're all on long rides. There's a long ride of life. There's the long ride of school. How are you going to ride your long ride? Are you afraid to ask for help? I was. Are you afraid people would laugh at you? I am. Do you know where you're going? Do you have a map? Things that we all encounter. There's a long ride of motherhood. There's a long ride of marriage and grandparenting. A long ride is a lifelong process of becoming. It's not about getting anywhere. Once a mother, you're always a mother, and you will always be becoming a mother. It's ever and ever, ever, ever changing. You will never not be a mother. This is an important thing. Understanding how are you going to ride your long ride. I bet you wish. I get this all the time, because I'm out there doing what I'm doing. They assume I want to live like this. No, I am the example of what we don't want to live like. We don't want to go out back and ride horses like that. I come from a long line of suffragettes. I couldn't have voted 100 years ago. I couldn't have even owned the horse I was riding. I couldn't have ridden astride 100 years ago. No, we do this. We think it's better back then. They do this with my truck all the time. The other day, it was probably 2 months ago now, back in Arizona, a guy came driving over. He had a brand new white Ford, brand new thing. Older gentleman comes driving over. I was just leaving a parking lot with the truck and trailer, getting in. I'm just stepping in, and he rolls his window down, and he's on his elbow like that. "Well, goddamn," he says, "that's the best truck Ford ever made." And I said, "Well, you want to trade straight across?" No, come on. No, you've got the better truck. I don't. You want to drive Fords around like that? No, of course not. It's like we do this. And it's such an erroneous thing. We don't want to travel by horses. We don't want to travel with trucks like that. I will be out next year, though. Next year is the 100th anniversary of women's rights to vote. And I will be out riding on the East Coast with Women Vote on my horses and packs. Yeah, I'll be out for that one. Yeah. So in 2014, it was the 100th anniversary of women's rights to vote in Montana, because we got the right to vote earlier than you folks did. And I set out on an 8,000-mile ride, and I rode from Montana to Wells, Maine, to Rachel Carson's Wildlife Refuge, and I stopped to visit Susan B. Anthony, grave and home site, Elizabeth Cady Stanton's grave and home site, and Matilda Jocelyn Gage's grave and home site, to pay homage to, because I have thought so many times when I'm out there that what they did for me and what they, because of this. Because I have had women stand before me. This is one incident. I'm sitting down on a park bench and I'm eating my breakfast because I've taken it outside with a plate to the restaurant because I want to watch my horses while I eat. And the woman approaches me, stands before me, in front of me. Her husband's behind her, and she's got her purse here. She's got a pair of pants on. She's like this, kind of looking down me at her nose, through her nose, and I was like, "Are you one of them feminists?" And I said, "Excuse me, are you one of them feminists?" And I said, "Well, maybe." And I said, "By the way, do you vote?" I said, "Well, yeah, of course I do." And I said, I noticed that you've got a pair of pants on, and I bet you've got your own money in that pocket. If your husband decided to beat you, and you want to leave, wouldn't you?" "Well, yes, of course, but he would never do anything like that." I said, "You know what? You're a feminist." And that I get. And I'm really not very happy with that because I think of what these women did for us. I mean, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton were called radicals. These are free thinkers. These were the progressive, wild women of that era, that they brought what they did for us. It took 77 years for us to get the right to vote. And the biggest opponent were women. And it makes me think, whose side would I have been on back then? I really wonder, whose side would I have been on? And it makes me think about the sides that I choose today and how they will affect our future, the future. Just things that I have a lot of time to think, believe me. There you go. I always get this, think outside the box. Well, don't live in a box. You don't have to think outside the box. It's like, come on, This is, and I think this, though, I think who doesn't live with uncertainty? Whose life does not live with uncertainty? It's just that mine happens to be a little more raw. But you've got to remember, I always had a cabin, and it was paid for, and it was taken care of by friends, and I could have stopped at any time. So, when you think about those people that are walking up from Guatemala and such things like that, that's uncertainty in its rawness. Me, though, it's raw. But we do this, again, we surround ourselves in our, with our securities and our plans and our insurance, and we pat ourselves with all this, and we think it's all going to happen like this and this and this, and then it gets blown up, and we shatter and we fall apart. And I'm okay with the uncertainty. I'm okay with the mystery. I'm okay with the surprise. I'm okay with the uncertainty that I happen to have every single day. I like that. I'm okay with it. It took a while, though, to get that into my head. Home was another one, discovering what it meant to have home with me, because I wanted to go home. There were times when I just couldn't stand it out there. I wanted to go home, but I'm like 5,000 miles from home. I mean, there was no way I had to find a way to make home here with me and take it with me. And finally, I finally have come up with this, and this is, I could take that cloth, the whole thing, and just grab it and pull it all off. It's not attached to anything. And you just have a set of ribs in there, and they're attached to the floor. And the netting goes over that, tucks underneath that. And this is my winter setup, and that's a tent cozy, like a tea cozy. And my tent is heated, and it's warm, and it's pretty inside. And I've got Indian blankets that have been given to me. And there's my kitchen, and over there's a doily where where I read and I write. And I go in at night, and I stretch, and I read, and I write, and I take care of myself. And I now can go in. I rarely go in and spend any nights with anybody. I can go in, I say, I have a cup of coffee with you, and then I say, I've got to go home. And I go out to my tent, which is on the yard, and I go home. And I go home at night, and I sleep in my own tent. If it's raining, I run a pitch of line and big tarp over it. Maybe rock it down if it's windy or something. But that was a very important lesson, was discovering home and how to carry it with me. My cabin is really not my home. Wherever my horses and my tent, my trailer right now is my home. I really love this. I love doing this, making these homes. This is how I slept those first 3 years. Without that was it. And then a tarp over my head. That was it. I don't know how I did that, but that was then. I'm caught in a rainstorm. I'm in a bathroom. 8,000-mile ride, 5,000-mile ride, 3,000-mile ride, 6,000-mile ride. Tired horses. I know. But now, I put that up there not to show you that my horses are so tired, but this is another feature of the fjords. All horses lie down like this, but the fjords will lie down there, and they'll stay like that for a while. They don't pop up all the time. Pop up because there's something, here's something. They lay down and they sleep. And that cool earth pulls the soreness from their bodies. It's so important that they lie down and rest like that. So here's my fly protection setup. I didn't have any money, right? So what am I going to do? I go to the secondhand store and I buy bed sheets. And I tie them on. I'm traveling with them right now because the bugs are so bad. I make these fly masks. Now Cashel provides them for me, those nice black ones that are nice and light. But then I went so far as up in the UP. I went so bad, yeah. And I got pajamas and I cut them in half and I put leggings and then a suspender over their tops. And I bag bomb their back underneath. I bag down here, their noses, and their udders. And I had leggings on them because I can't have my horses doing this all night. I don't have a horse in the morning. They had to rest. Finally up there, I had to find shelter every single night. So that compounds it. You know, having to go in every night, not just food, water, but I also needed shelter every night. And it kind of compounds it. You can't just go anywhere. You know, a lot of times I'm off somewhere. I just go hide somewhere and, you know, nobody knows where I'm at. Had bells on night, and this was another lesson learning that I didn't have to look at my horses all the time. I can hear them. They've got bells, I can hear ding-a-ding-ding, they're eating. Ding-a-ding-ding, oh, the head went up. Oh, better check. Ding-a-ding-ding, bing-a-ding-ding, oh, better get out there right away. The reason why that tent was set up the way it is because I can go out of that tent in any direction. When I go to bed at night, I have my gun, my knife, my boots set up, my headlamps on my wrist, and I can go out in a moment's notice and get out in any direction. Bells go off, go. No bell, better get out there too. You know, there's no horses there. They're usually on a 25-foot picket line on their front leg or hobbles. It's either one. Now, Essie Pearl, or Liska, I mean, she hardly ever has to be tied. I do my own shoeing. These are the horseshoes. These are from the blacksmith shop in Virginia. He provides horseshoes for me, and now he pre-shapes them. He's got prints of my horse's hooves and pre-shapes them. That's helped an awful lot. My horseshoeing equipment gets shipped ahead through the Postal Service, and then the horseshoes go with that. And I can get 800-900 miles out of a set of shoes. Reset, pull reset. Caught in a rainstorm, I'm in an abandoned barn. This happens a lot. Loosen the cinches, take all the gear off, drop the bridles off, and it just poured. So you can see I had to finally go find help and find some place and knock on somebody's door and ask if I could stay there for a few days and dry out because it just poured and poured and poured. This is on my way over here. Riding stock tank to stock tank down in New Mexico, Wyoming, eastern Montana. There's water out there if you got cattle out there. I do that down south. Here's some doggy pictures. I know, my beloved dog. I know. Caught in a rainstorm. And there's that. I'm caught in a storm. This is a 1,600-mile ride that I did from Montana, northwest corner of Montana home, cabin. And I'm headed back over across the mountains, across Bob Marshall. I'm crossing the Mission Valley. It's the Flathead Reservation, Confederated Tribes of the Flathead Reservation. I have permission to cross their lands. And that day before this, though, it's just hot and miserable and bugs. And so I got up in that morning. It was going to rain. I knew it was going to rain, but it was like, it's okay if it's going to rain. It's okay to ride in the rain. It's just you don't ride in the wind in the rain. But so I was willing to take the chance and ride in the rain. I wanted to get across there. So I've just come across the Cabinet Mountains. There's this Mission Valley. It's a flat area, and then the Mission Mountains are on the other side. And I'm headed east, and I could see the clouds. And I thought for sure I was gonna miss it. They were north of me, and I thought for sure, I could see they had hail. I could smell it. I knew rain was coming. But here they came, this storm, these clouds, and they are hitting the Mission Mountains, and they're exploding and rolling down and coming down towards me and going north. And this is serious wind, and this is serious rain and hail. And I'm galloping down this pavement. I can do this with these horseshoes on. I'm galloping down the pavement with 3 horses and a dog running, and I'm looking for a place where I can get in through these fence lines. It's all been fenced, it's all locked and gated. And I'm looking for a place with barbed wire, it's rusty barbed wire. I'm looking for a place, and I'm going to drop that fence line down, take the clips off and drop that fence line, because my horses will walk across pavement, will walk across barbed wire fences like that. I do this a lot. So, so I find a spot, and on the other side is this a grove of I don't know whether there's cedar or fir trees. I don't know, but there's a big thick, and that's where I was headed. So I get Essie across, and I get Hart across, and Montana. This is new, and I'm panicking. I'm getting these things done, and it's windy, and I've got rain gear on, and it's just like madness, And she bulks, catches her foot. Easy, come on. Finally, I get her across, and we enter into this sanctuary. It's like a little haven. It's quiet. There's no wind. The rain has stopped. It was so thick and densely packed in there by these canopies, and they were all clear, like somebody had gone in and cleared it. So I was able to take and tie each horse up to a tree. I pulled all the weight off of them. Gave them each an apple, and then it just dumped. It just poured. And I was okay. I was sitting underneath a tree and had my poncho over me, just sitting down there, and I was having a cup of tea. We were out of sight, the horses and I, as a car slowly drove by. I could hear the fast beat of windshield wipers as the rain continued in earnest. I'm not always so fortunate finding shelter like this. I've more than once found myself in a roadside ditch exposed for all to see of my folly at having been caught in a storm. Undoubtedly, I am a pitiful sight as drivers motor past in luxury, eating, drinking, with radios blaring music, or warning of a storm, and chatting with passengers or talking on cell phones. And there I am, a pitiful sight indeed, but unwilling to trade places. Nature has me wrapped in her arms with no immediate escape. She fills me with vitality and nourishment and offers me mounting challenges. It is the secret to being alive. It's just too easy the other way. I find this life as a long rider intimate and engaging. It's no nonsense, cut to the chase living is direct, persistent, and yet reliable. I always know the sun will set, the sun will rise. I chuckle at the notion that long riding is about freedom. Actually, I come and go as nature dictates, not freely as I please. I wait for subsiding rain showers. I wait for calmer winds, for snow to melt. I ride the desert in the winter, the mountains in the summer. I cannot ride in sweltering heat or violent storms. My tent is even set up according to wind direction or the sun's heat. This storm would have held much less meaning to a person sensibly secured in a motor vehicle or building. But I simply must face the fears, doubts, the criticisms, and the weaknesses that many people keep many people from ever daring to go on the adventure that is tantalizing them. I simply must be in it, engaged in all that life is. I don't want escape from civilization with the idealized notion that nature holds all the answers. When I look down at the pen and paper I journal on, when I reach for the high-tech nylon tent and the camping gear I use, or the lightweight pack saddle I use, I realize that all of these things have evolved from civilizations where people with ideas and notions and visions have all come together to form even more ideas and notions in things like headlamps and small propane burners. I do not delude myself that I am leaving it all behind. Unless one has the knowledge and experience that's not a knowledge and experience of primitive living skills, it's impossible to leave behind everything that's not of its original casting and live naturally. My rides are infinitely easier because of these modern conveniences I carry. I am not trying to go back to nature, as many people seem to think. I just want to go along with her and learn all that she has to teach me as I make this pilgrimage on the earth. So, there's that. Well, when I started earlier and I had mentioned about fear, I had somebody ask me, it was back in Iowa. Somebody asked me, a man standing in the back asked me, may I have any regrets? And then somebody asked me, how has this changed me? And of course, you couldn't possibly do something like this and not be profoundly changed. I mean, I think that I'm changed, believe me, I've been changed. I remember telling a newspaper reporter on the second ride out, and it was rather arrogant of me when I think back on it, she asked me, I mean, I'd ridden maybe 4,000 miles, maybe 3.5, I don't know, something like that, not much. And she and she asked me, how long do you think you'll do this? You know, how long will you do this? And I said, I'm going to ride until it changes me completely. You know, kind of arrogantly like that. You know, it's like, oh yeah, right. But it did. It has changed me completely. I'm not the same person that I had been when I left. I know that I'm far more empathetic. I'm far less likely to say I'm right and you're wrong, and to judge so quickly as we can do. But I also feel that, you know, this river of humanity, and life is not easy for anybody. It's not for anybody. And as far as regrets, yeah, it has been a trade-off, I've got to admit. I mean, I have been in many homes where I've sat and partook in their dinner meals or conversation, and it's a loving couple, and maybe their children, and I think a bit envious, you know, to have that I gave all of that up. I did give that up. I gave up the relationships and friends, and those of you who read the book, I realized at the end of that 8,000-mile ride, I came back and I realized I no longer had my community. The community I thought I was going to retire in, my community of friends and family, that they no longer existed because I had changed so much, and I had missed so many marriages and births and divorces and all of it. I'd missed it all, and I couldn't go back. But then I discovered this very big community that I had packed in my saddlebags, and I took them out and found a way to embrace that. But the thing about the fear is really a big thing, and it really keeps everybody from doing so much. And I really learned early on that this fear stuff is like, it's all manifested up here. It's all up here. That when a grizzly bear comes into the campsite, that's not fear, that's reaction. I'm reacting to something. I'm not afraid. I couldn't possibly, I'd be dead. It would stop you. You're paralyzed by fear. That life without fear is freedom. To think like that, to not use that word, I'm afraid, to take that out of your language is really a powerful thing, and what it will do for you, because all these things that you think are going to happen are all just that. You use caution, attentiveness, and skill, and you proceed without fear, and your life will be changed. So I say to you, live your life to inspire others, and you too shall be inspired by your own life. Don't look to me for inspiration. Inspire yourselves. And I say to myself, Bernice, you don't have a lot of time. Nobody has a lot of time on this planet. Don't let it pass you by. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.